Jake Thompson was having the worst month of his life. His cargo ship, the Star Runner, sat locked up in the impound lot on Frontier Station like a giant metal reminder of how badly things had gone wrong. The job was supposed to be simple: deliver medical supplies to the outer colonies. But space pirates had other plans. They hit him right between the jump gates, demanding his cargo. Jake tried to fight them off, but his old ship was no match for their military-grade weapons. By the time station security arrived, half his cargo was gone and his ship was damaged beyond what his insurance would cover. Now the Crimson Syndicate wanted their money, all of it, plus interest, plus late fees. The number kept growing every day like some kind of nightmare that wouldn't end. Jake sat in Murphy's bar, staring at his empty glass and wondering if he should just disappear into the deep space roots and never come back. At least out there, nobody could find him. But then, what kind of life would that be? "You look like a man with problems," said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see someone he'd never met before. The stranger was tall and thin, with dark green skin and eyes that seemed to look right through him. His clothes were expensive, but not flashy, the kind that said he had money but didn't need to show it off. "Don't we all?" Jake replied. "Not?" Really wanting company, the alien sat down anyway. "My name is Korath. I've heard about your situation with the Syndicate." Jake's hand moved toward the blaster on his hip. "What's it to you?" "Relax, friend. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to solve problems." Korath signaled the bartender for 2 drinks. "I have a job that could clear your debt completely." "I've heard that before. Last time someone offered me an easy job, I ended up owing twice as much money. This isn't easy money. It's hard money, the kind you earn." Korath slid a data pad across the table. "I need someone to make a delivery run through Imperial space. The route goes right through their blockade zones." Jake looked at the numbers on the screen. It was enough to pay off the Syndicate and fix his ship, maybe even have some left over. What's the catch? The cargo is ... unusual. Weapons. Drugs. Because I don't do that kind of work. Nothing like that. It's a person. Someone who needs to get from here to the neutral zone without being detected. Jake leaned back in his chair. "You want me to smuggle someone past Imperial patrols?" "That's a death sentence if they catch me. Only if they catch you. Your reputation says you're one of the best pilots in this sector. The kind who can make a ship dance through asteroid fields. Flattery won't make the job less dangerous." Korath smiled, showing teeth that were a little too sharp. "No, but it might make it worth the risk. The person you'll be transporting isn't exactly ... free to travel on their own. They're bound by certain legal obligations." "You mean they're a criminal?" "Not exactly. More like ... indentured. Their family owes debts, and this person is working to pay them off. Very common in my culture." Didn't like the sound of that, but his options were running out fast. The Syndicate wasn't known for their patience, and he'd already gotten 2 visits from their collection agents. The 3rd visit wouldn't be a friendly chat. "What kind of person are we talking about here?" "Down quiet. Won't cause you any trouble. They actually know quite a bit about starship operations, so they might even be helpful during the journey. And after I deliver them. Your debt is cleared, your ship is yours again, and you never hear from me or my associates. Clean break." Stared at the data pad again. The money was real. He could verify the account codes. But something felt wrong about the whole deal. People didn't just offer solutions to problems this big without wanting something in return. Why me? There are plenty of smugglers on this station who would take this job, because you're not a smuggler. You're a legitimate cargo pilot who got unlucky. Imperial scanners look for criminal patterns, not honest merchants with financial troubles. You're the perfect cover. That made sense, in a twisted way. Jake had always prided himself on running a clean operation. No contraband, no questions asked cargo, no shady deals. It's just honest work for honest pay. Look where that had gotten him. I need to think about it, of course. Don't think too long. The Syndicate doesn't offer payment plans. And I hear their next visit to your ship berth might involve some renovations you won't like. Korath stood up and placed a credit chip on the table. That covers your bar tab and gives you some walking money. When you're ready to discuss terms, find me on Deck 7, Section C. I'll be there for the next 6 hours. Jake watched him leave, then picked up the credit chip. It was real money, enough to eat something better than protein paste for the first time in weeks. He pocketed it and ordered another drink, trying to think of alternatives. By the time he finished his third drink, he couldn't come up with any. His mechanic friends were all broke too. His sister back on Earth had her own family to worry about. The bank had already turned him down twice for loans. He found Korath exactly where he said he'd be, in a small office that looked like it was used for private meetings. The alien was reading something on a tablet, but looked up when Jake walked in. I thought you might come back. Don't have much choice. The syndicate wants their money in 48 hours, or they start taking payment in other ways. Smart man. Shall we discuss the details? They spent the next hour going over the plan. The route would take them through 3 different star systems, avoiding the main shipping lanes where Imperial patrols were heaviest. Jake would need to upgrade his ship's fake identification codes and make sure his cargo hold had proper life support. One more thing, Korath said as they finished up the paperwork. The person you're transporting has been through some difficult times. They might seem ... distant at first. Don't take it personally. As long as they don't cause problems, I don't care if they want to meditate in the cargo hold the whole trip. They won't cause problems. In fact, I think you'll find them quite helpful once they warm up to you. The next morning, Jake met Korath at the docking bay. His ship was there, released from impound with all fees paid. It felt good to step aboard the Star Runner again, to hear the familiar hum of the engines and smell the recycled air that meant home. Your passenger is already aboard, Korath said, handing him a final data pad with jump coordinates. Remember? Avoid Imperial checkpoints. Stick to the planned route, and you'll have no problems. Jake nodded and made his way to the passenger cabin. He knocked on the door and waited for a response. "Come in," said a quiet voice. He opened the door and stopped short. The person sitting on the small bunk wasn't what he expected at all. She was young, probably in her 20s, with pale blue skin marked by intricate silver patterns that looked almost like tattoos. Her hair was white as starlight, and her eyes were the color of deep space. She was beautiful, but there was something sad about the way she held herself. It's like someone who had learned not to expect good things to happen. "I'm Jake, your pilot for this trip. I hope the cabin is comfortable enough." "It's fine, thank you. I'm Zara." Her voice had an accent he couldn't place, musical but careful. "Well, Zara, we'll be jumping to hyperspace in about an hour. Is there anything you need before we go?" "No, thank you. I have everything I require." Jake nodded and started to leave, then turned back. "Look, I know this situation isn't ideal for either of us, but we're going to be traveling together for the next few days, so if you need anything, just ask. I'm not much for conversation, but I make decent coffee." For the first time, she almost smiled. "Thank you. That's very kind." As Jake prepared for departure, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this job than Korath had told him. But the money was real, his debt would be cleared, and in a few days, he'd be free to start over. He just hoped he wasn't making the biggest mistake of his life. The first thing Jake noticed about Zara was how quiet she moved. Most passengers clumped around the ship like they were wearing magnetic boots, but she seemed to float from place to place. It was like watching someone who had spent their whole life on spaceships. On the second day of their journey, Jake was struggling with a navigation problem. The ship's computer kept showing error messages every time he tried to plot a course around the Imperial patrol zones. He'd been working on it for 3 hours, getting more frustrated by the minute. "Excuse me?" Zara said softly from behind him. "I couldn't help but notice you're having trouble with the nav system." Jake looked up from the control panel, rubbing his tired eyes. "Yeah, the computer keeps rejecting the jump calculations. I think one of the sensor arrays got damaged during my last run-in with pirates. May I take a look?" He almost said no. Passengers weren't supposed to touch ship controls, but something about the way she asked made him step aside. "Sure, but I doubt you'll find anything I missed." Zara sat down at the navigation console, and her fingers moved across the controls like she'd been using this exact system her whole life. Within minutes, she'd found the problem, a tiny error in the sensor calibration that Jake had completely missed. There, she said, standing up. The sensor array wasn't damaged. It just needed to be recalibrated for this sector's gravitational fields. Jake stared at the screen. The navigation computer was working perfectly again. How did you know? How to do that? I've spent a lot of time on ships, she said simply, then walked away before he could ask more questions. That night, Jake couldn't stop thinking about it. Ship navigation wasn't something you just picked up by being a passenger. It took years of training to understand sensor arrays and gravitational calculations. Yet Zara had fixed his problem in minutes. The next morning brought another surprise. Jake was reviewing their fuel consumption when Zara appeared in the doorway of the cockpit. We should change course, she said. What? Why? There's going to be an Imperial patrol at the next jump point. 3 destroyers and a command ship. Jake looked at his instruments. I don't see anything on the sensors. They won't show up on sensors until we're much closer. But they're there. Trust me. Something in her voice made him believe her. Jake pulled up the star charts and found an alternate route that would add 6 hours to their journey, but keep them away from the jump point Zara had warned about. Sure. Enough when they reached the new coordinates. Jake's long-range scanners picked up the energy signatures of Imperial ships exactly where Zara had said they would be. How did you know? He asked. Lucky guess, she replied. But Jake could tell she was lying. Their next stop was Nexus Station, a massive trading post that served as a neutral meeting ground for dozens of different species. Jake needed to refuel and pick up some supplies. But he was starting to worry about traveling with Zara in public. His concerns proved justified the moment they stepped off the ship. A group of well-dressed aliens were walking past when one of them caught sight of Zara. The alien stopped so suddenly that his companions nearly walked into him. He stared at her with wide eyes, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't find words. Zara quickly pulled her hood up and grabbed Jake's arm. We need to go now. What's wrong, please? Just walk. They hurried through the station corridors. But Jake could hear whispered conversations starting behind them. More aliens were noticing Zara, and their reactions were all the same: shock, recognition, and something that looked like fear in the supply shop. The owner kept staring at Zara while Jake bought fuel cells and ration packs. The alien's hands shook as he processed the payment, and he kept glancing at Zara like he expected her to say something important. That'll be no charge. The shopkeeper stammered finally. What? Why? Please, just take what you need and go. Jake was completely confused, but Zara pulled him out of the shop before he could ask more questions. What just happened? Back there? Jake demanded once they were back on his ship. Nothing important? Nothing important. That guy gave us free supplies? People don't do that unless they're scared of you or they think you're someone special. Zara turned away from him. You're imagining things. But Jake wasn't imagining the way she carried herself when she thought he wasn't looking. There was something regal about her posture. It's like someone who was used to other people bowing when she entered a room. He also wasn't imagining her knowledge of things she shouldn't know. When they were planning their next jump, Zara casually mentioned that the trade routes through the Centauri system had been changed recently due to political tensions. How do you know about Centauri politics? Jake asked. You hear things? Kind of things. And where do you hear them? It doesn't matter. But it did matter. Everything about Zara was starting to feel like a puzzle with missing pieces. She spoke 4 different languages that Jake could identify, and probably more that he couldn't. She knew ship systems better than most engineers. She could predict Imperial patrol patterns with impossible accuracy. And then there were the little things, the way she ate with perfect table manners, even when they were sharing ration packs in the cramped galley. The way she never seemed surprised by anything, like she'd seen it all before. The way she automatically took the most comfortable chair in any room, then seemed to catch herself and move to a less prominent seat. On their 4th day together, Jake was working on some engine maintenance when he heard a commotion from the passenger area. He grabbed a wrench and ran to investigate, thinking maybe they had intruders. Instead, he found Zara standing over 3 unconscious men in expensive suits. They were armed with military-grade weapons. But somehow she had taken them all down without making enough noise for Jake to hear from the engine room. "Who are these guys?" Jake asked, staring at the unconscious attackers. "Bounty hunters," Zara said calmly. "Like this happened every day. They must have followed us from Nexus Station, bounty hunters." "Why would bounty hunters be after you?" Zara was checking the weapons the men had been carrying. They were top-of-the-line gear, the kind that cost more than Jake's ship. "They weren't after me," she said finally. "They were after you. Something about unpaid debts." Jake felt his blood run cold. The syndicate must have decided not to wait for their money after all. "We should tie them up and drop them off at the next station," he said. "No. That would only delay the problem. I need to send a message," before Jake could ask what she meant. Zara was moving again. She dragged the unconscious men to the airlock and stripped them of their weapons and communication equipment. Then she programmed the airlock to eject them in an escape pod with just enough life support to reach the nearest station. "That should discourage others from trying the same thing," she said. Jake stared at her. "How do you know how to do all this? Fighting weapons? Tactical planning? Who are you really?" For a moment, Zara looked like she might tell him the truth. Her carefully controlled expression cracked, and Jake saw something vulnerable underneath. "I'm someone who's trying to stay alive," she said finally. "Just like you." That night, Jake lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling. Everything about this job was wrong. Korath had lied to him about who Zara was. That much was obvious. But the question was whether she was more dangerous than he'd been told, or less dangerous and more important. Either way, Jake was starting to realize he was in way over his head. This wasn't just a simple transport job anymore. This was something bigger, something that involved imperial politics and people who could afford military-grade bounty hunters. And somehow, the quiet young woman sleeping in the passenger cabin was at the center of it all. The problem was, Jake was starting to care about what happened to her. Despite all the secrets and lies, despite the danger she'd brought into his life, he found himself wanting to protect her, which might just be the biggest mistake he'd ever made. Jake woke up to alarms screaming throughout his ship. Red lights flashed in the darkness as he stumbled out of his bunk, trying to figure out what was happening. The ship's computer was announcing something about an incoming vessel, but Jake's sleepy brain couldn't process the words. He made it to the cockpit just as a massive shadow fell across his view screen. Jake's mouth dropped open as he stared at the biggest warship he'd ever seen. It was easily 10 times the size of his cargo. Hauler bristling with weapons and covered in symbols he didn't recognize. "This is Admiral Thane of the ethereal Imperial Fleet," boomed a voice over the communication system. "Prepare to be boarded. Do not resist." Jake's hands shook as he reached for the controls. He could try to run, but that monster ship would vaporize him before he could even turn around. His only choice was to surrender and hope they didn't decide to execute him on the spot. "Jake?" Zara's voice came from behind him. "It's going to be okay." He spun around to face her. "Okay? We're about to be captured by an Imperial warship. They'll probably throw us in prison for the rest of our lives." "No, they won't," Zara said calmly. "Trust me." Before Jake could ask what she meant, his ship shuddered as the Imperial vessel grabbed them with a tractor beam. Through the view screen, he watched his cargo bay doors being forced open by mechanical arms. A few minutes later, the sound of boots on metal echoed through the ship. "Stay behind me," Jake whispered to Zara, grabbing the emergency blaster from under his pilot's seat. "Put that down," she said gently. "Please. Are you crazy? We need to defend ourselves." "Jake, put the weapon down. Everything is going to be fine." Something in her voice made him hesitate. In all the time they'd traveled together, Zara had never been wrong about anything. She'd predicted the Imperial patrol, warned him about the bounty hunters, and somehow always seemed to know exactly what was going to happen next. The footsteps grew louder, coming toward the cockpit. Jake's heart hammered in his chest as he waited for armed soldiers to burst through the door. Instead, what he saw made no sense at all. The first person through the door was clearly a military officer. But instead of pointing weapons at them, he immediately dropped to one knee. Behind him, a dozen other soldiers did the same thing. "Your Imperial Highness," the officer said, his voice filled with respect. "We have been searching for you." Jake blinked hard, sure he was having some kind of hallucination. Imperial Highness? He looked at Zara, expecting her to be just as confused as he was. Instead, she stood straighter, and suddenly everything about her changed. The way she held her head, the way she moved, even the way she breathed, seemed different. This wasn't the quiet, careful passenger he'd been traveling with. This was someone who expected to be obeyed. "Admiral Thane," she said, and now her voice carried authority that made Jake's spine tingle. "I assume my uncle's plan has failed?" "Yes, Your Highness." "The assassination attempt was discovered and stopped. However, Prince Mordeth has declared you dead and claimed the throne in your absence." Jake felt like his brain was breaking. Assassination attempt? Uncle throne? He looked back and forth between Zara and the kneeling soldiers, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. "Stand up, Admiral," Zara said. "We have much to discuss." The officer rose to his feet, and Jake could see he was older, with gray hair, and the kind of scars that came from real battles. "Your Highness, we should return you to the capital immediately. People need to see that you're alive, not yet. First, I need to know exactly what happened." As the Admiral began explaining, Jake's world turned completely upside down. According to the soldier, Zara wasn't just some minor noble who'd fallen on hard times. She was Princess Sephora, heir to the throne of the Ethereal Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Her uncle, Prince Mordeth, had been planning to kill her and take the throne for himself. But Zara had found out about the plot and arranged her own disappearance. She'd worked with loyal supporters to fake her capture and sail into slavery, knowing that no one would look for a princess among common criminals. "You chose your cover well, Your Highness," Admiral Thane said. "Traveling with a small-time cargo pilot was brilliant. No one would suspect royalty to be aboard such a modest vessel." Jake's knees felt weak. He sank into his pilot's chair, staring at Zara, no, Princess Sephora, like he'd never seen her before. "You're a princess," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned to look at him. And for the first time since the soldiers had arrived, her royal mask slipped. He could see the person he'd been traveling with underneath all the ceremony. "And titles." "Yes," she said simply. "You're the heir to an empire." "Yes." "And you've been pretending to be a servant to hide from people who want to kill you." "Yes." Jake ran his hands through his hair, trying to process everything. "So when Korith said you were from a noble family that had fallen on hard times, was telling the truth in a way? My family is definitely having hard times with relatives trying to murder each other for the throne." "Your Highness," Admiral Thane interrupted, "we really should discuss your return to the capital. The Empire needs its rightful ruler." "And walk straight into a civil war?" Mordeth has had weeks to consolidate power and convince people that I'm dead. If I simply appear now, it will look like I've returned from the grave to steal his throne. But you are the rightful heir. I know that, and you know that. But political reality is more complicated. Half the noble houses probably support Mordeth. By now, either because they believe I'm dead, or because they're afraid of what he'll do if they don't. Jake listened to this conversation about empires and thrones and civil wars, feeling like he'd accidentally wandered into someone else's life. Just a few days ago, his biggest problem had been paying off his debt to the Crimson Syndicate. He was apparently in the middle of an imperial succession crisis. "There's something else, Your Highness," Admiral Thane said carefully. "Mordeth has been spreading rumors that you were corrupted by contact with lesser species. He's using your time in hiding as evidence that you're unfit to rule." Zara's face hardened. "Lesser species? What exactly has he been saying? That you've been influenced by human culture? That you've forgotten your duties to the Empire?" Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment. He was the human influence. They were talking about his simple cargo ship, his basic way of life, his complete ignorance of imperial politics. All of it was apparently being used as evidence against Zara. "I should go," he said quietly. "What?" Zara turned to him quickly. "This is imperial business. I don't belong here. I'll just take my ship and leave you to sort this out with your people." "Jake, wait, no, it's okay. I understand now. It's a whole thing, the job, the payment, everything. It was all part of some royal scheme. I was just the cover story, a simple human who wouldn't ask too many questions. He could see he'd hurt her feelings, but Jake was too overwhelmed to care. Thing he'd thought he knew about the past few days was a lie. The quiet passenger, who'd helped him fix his navigation system, was actually one of the most powerful people in the galaxy. Admiral Zara said, her voice returning to its royal tone, "Please give me a few minutes alone with Jake." "Your Highness, I don't think that wasn't a request." The soldiers filed out, leaving Jake alone with the woman he thought he was starting to understand. "I know you're angry," she said. "Angry? I'm not angry. I'm confused. I'm scared. I'm way out of my depth here. But I'm not angry. Everything I told you about myself was true, in its own way. I really was trying to stay alive. I really was running from people who wanted to hurt me. The only thing I didn't tell you was exactly who I am. Only thing, Zara? You're a princess. You could buy 1,000 ships like mine without even noticing the expense. And that's exactly why I couldn't tell you the truth. If you'd known who I really was, you would have treated me differently. You would have been afraid of me, or you would have tried to use me for your own gain." Jake thought about that. Was probably right. If Korath had told him he was transporting imperial royalty, Jake would have either refused the job completely or spent the entire trip trying to figure out how to profit from it. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now I have to decide how to reclaim my throne without starting a war that will destroy my empire." "And what about me?" Zara looked at him for a long moment. "What do you want to happen?" It was a simple question, but Jake realized he didn't have a simple answer. A week ago, he would have said he just wanted to pay off his debts and get back to the quiet life of a cargo pilot. But now, looking at Zara standing there with the weight of an empire on her shoulders, he found himself wanting something completely different. He wanted to help her, which was probably the most dangerous thing he could possibly want. 3 days later, Jake found himself sitting in a hidden base that he never knew existed. Admiral Thane had brought them to a secret facility built inside an asteroid, complete with docking bays, living quarters, and enough military equipment to outfit a small army. Zara sat across from him at a metal table, studying holographic displays that showed star maps, troop movements, and political data that made Jake's head spin. She'd been working non-stop since they arrived, and he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "There has to be another way," she said for the 10th time that morning. "Your Highness, Admiral Thane," replied patiently. "Our intelligence confirms that Prince Mordeth has the support of at least half the noble houses. If we simply announce your return, it will split the empire in two. And if I don't return, he'll destroy everything my family built over the past century. He's already started changing trade agreements and military alliances. In 6 months, the empire won't be recognizable." Jake had been listening to these discussions for days, feeling more useless with each passing hour. What did a cargo pilot know about running an empire? But watching Zara struggle with impossible choices was driving him crazy. "What if we don't announce your return?" he said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. Jake felt his face get hot, but he pushed forward with his idea. "I mean, what if we prove Mordeth is the problem without revealing that you're alive? If people knew what he was really like, they might change their minds about supporting him." Zara leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Back on my homeworld, we had a saying, give someone enough rope and they'll hang themselves. What if we gave Mordeth enough rope?" Admiral Thane frowned. "I don't understand." "Let him keep thinking Zara is dead. But start gathering evidence of all the bad things he's doing. Criminal stuff. Things that would make the noble houses turn against him." Zara's eyes lit up. "Intelligence gathering. We could infiltrate his operations, document his crimes, build a case against him." "Exactly. And when you finally reveal yourself, you're not just claiming the throne, you're saving the empire from a criminal." For the first time in days, Zara smiled. It could work. But it would be dangerous. We'd have to get close to Mordeth's inner circle without being detected. "Your Highness, Admiral Thane," said carefully, "this plan would require you to remain in hiding while we conduct covert operations. It could take months. I'm willing to wait if it means avoiding a civil war. But the risk to you personally would be enormous. If Mordeth discovered you were alive, he'd try to kill me again. I understand the risk, Admiral. Jake cleared his throat. Actually, I think the plan could work because of the risk. What do you mean? Think about it. Mordeth believes Zara is dead. He's not looking for her anymore. That makes her invisible. She could go places and see things that royal spies never could. You're suggesting the princess personally conduct espionage operations? Admiral Thane looked horrified. I'm suggesting she'll do what she's already been doing, hide in plain sight. She spent weeks on my ship pretending to be a servant. She's good at it. Zara stood up and walked to the star map, studying the locations of Mordeth's known operations. We'd need to target his illegal activities. Arms dealing, corruption, things that would shock the noble houses. Our intelligence suggests he's been selling military weapons to rebel groups in 3 different sectors. Admiral Thane said reluctantly, if we could prove that, ... It would be treason of the highest order. The noble houses would have no choice but to abandon him. Jake felt a surge of excitement. For the first time since learning Zara's true identity, he felt like he could actually help. I could get us into those places. My ship isn't much to look at, but that's exactly why it would work. Nobody pays attention to small cargo haulers. Absolutely not, Admiral Thane said firmly. I cannot allow the heir to the throne to participate in such dangerous operations. With respect, Admiral, Zara said, her voice taking on its royal tone, you cannot allow or forbid me to do anything. I am your future empress. The room fell silent. Jake could see the Admiral struggling between his duty to protect Zara and his duty to obey her orders. If we do this, Zara continued, we do it properly. Full intelligence support, backup plans, emergency extraction protocols, but we do it. Over the next 2 weeks, they planned the most dangerous job of Jake's life. The first target was a weapons depot on the edge of Imperial space, where Mordeth was supposedly selling military-grade plasma cannons to anyone with enough money. Jake's cargo ship had been modified with hidden recording equipment and advanced sensors. To anyone who looked, it would appear to be just another desperate pilot trying to make a living in the gray areas of space law. Zara had transformed herself again. This time, into a mechanic and navigator for hire. She'd darkened her skin with temporary dye and changed her silver markings to look like ordinary tattoos. When she spoke, she used the rough accent of the Outer Rim colonies. You sure you can pull this off? Jake asked as they approached the depot. I've been pretending to be other people my whole life, she replied. Royal events, state dinners, diplomatic meetings, it's all acting. This is different. If someone recognizes you, ... they won't. Trust me. The weapons depot turned out to be a massive space station built into an old mining platform. Ships of all sizes came and went, and Jake could see that security was deliberately light. Nobody wanted too much attention on this kind of business. They docked without any problems and made their way to the main trading floor. Jake had never seen so many illegal weapons in one place. Plasma rifles, sonic grenades, military grade. Shields, everything was available if you had the money and didn't ask too many questions. Can I help you? Asked a security guard, who looked like he could crush Jake's head with one hand. We're looking to buy some defensive systems for our ship, Jake said nervously. Nothing too fancy, just enough to discourage pirates. Talk to Vex at Counter 7. He handles the small stuff. As they walked through the station, Zara's hidden cameras recorded everything. Serial numbers on weapons, faces of buyers and sellers, shipping manifests that showed where everything was going. The evidence was overwhelming. This operation was clearly connected to the Imperial military. Those plasma cannons, Zara whispered, pointing to a display case. Those are from the 7th Fleet Arsenal. I recognize the modification patterns. How can you tell? I helped design those modifications 2 years ago. Mordeth is selling weapons that belong to the Imperial Navy. They spent 4 hours on the station, gathering evidence and making small purchases to maintain their cover. By the time they left, they had enough proof to destroy Mordeth's credibility with the military leadership, but their success came with a price. As they were leaving the station, Jake noticed they were being followed by a sleek patrol ship that hadn't been there when they arrived. We've got company, he told Zara. She checked the sensor readings. 2 ships now. They're trying to box us. In friends of yours. More likely friends of Mordeth. Someone must have recognized me after all. The next few minutes were the most terrifying of Jake's life. The patrol ships opened fire without warning, forcing Jake to dive his cargo hauler into an asteroid field where the bigger ships couldn't follow easily. Can you lose them? Zara asked, strapping herself into the co-pilot seat. Maybe, but they probably called for backup. As if on cue, 3 more ships appeared on their sensors, coming from different directions. We're not going to make it, Jake said, watching the tactical display. They're too fast and there are too many of them. Zara was quiet for a moment, then she activated the emergency communication system. Admiral Thane, this is Princess Sephora. We need immediate assistance. Your Highness? What's your situation? We're under attack by 5 patrol ships. They know who I am. Understood. Help is on the way. Try to stay alive for 10 more minutes. Jake looked at her. Princess Sephora? She smiled grimly. If we're going to die, I want to die as myself. They spent the next 8 minutes playing deadly hide-and-seek among the asteroids. With enemy ships firing at them from every direction, Jake's cargo hauler wasn't built for combat, but he managed to keep them alive by using every trick he'd learned in 20 years of flying, just when their luck was about to run out. Admiral Thane's ships arrived. 3 Imperial cruisers dropped out of hyperspace and engaged the patrol ships, evening the odds instantly. Your Highness, came Thane's voice over the radio. Please tell me you got what you came for. Zara looked at the data storage device and her hand filled with evidence of Mordeth's crimes. We got it, Admiral. We got everything. As they limped back to the hidden base, Jake realized something had changed between them during the fight. They'd trusted each other completely, working together like partners instead of a princess and her reluctant pilot. That was good work. Back there, Zara said quietly. Thinks you weren't too bad yourself, Your Highness. She laughed. When we're alone, you can still call me Zara, even though you're a princess, especially because I'm a princess. Sometimes I need to remember what it's like to be a normal person. Jake thought about that as they flew through hyperspace. Maybe being a princess wasn't as different from being a cargo pilot as he'd thought. They both had to make difficult choices, navigate dangerous situations, and try to do the right thing even when it was risky. The evidence they'd gathered was devastating. For 3 weeks, Jake and Zara had worked together to build a case that would destroy Mordeth's credibility forever. They had recordings of him selling Imperial weapons, documents showing he'd stolen from the royal treasury, proof that he'd made secret deals with enemy governments. But their success came with an unexpected cost. Mordeth had discovered that someone was investigating him, and now he was making desperate moves to protect himself. He's announced your death publicly, Admiral Thane reported during their morning briefing. Full state funeral, period of mourning, the whole ceremony. He's trying to make it impossible for you to return. Zara stared at the holographic news reports showing her own funeral. Thousands of citizens had gathered to mourn their lost princess, and Mordeth stood at the center of it all, playing the role of the grieving uncle. He's also claiming that rumors of your survival are enemy propaganda, Thane continued. Anyone who says they've seen you alive will be arrested for spreading false information. Jake felt sick watching the reports. He's turned your own people against the idea of you being alive? It's worse than that, Zara said quietly. Look at the crowd. They really are grieving. They loved me, and now they think I'm dead. I suddenly appear and tell them it was all a lie. They'll feel betrayed, Jake finished. Exactly. Mordeth isn't just trying to keep the throne. He's trying to make sure that even if I return, my own people won't trust me. Admiral Thane cleared his throat. Your Highness, our window of opportunity is closing. If we don't act soon, Mordeth will consolidate his power completely. I know. Schedule a meeting with the Council of Houses for tomorrow. It's time to end this. That night, Jake found Zara standing alone on the observation deck of their hidden base, staring out at the stars. She looked smaller than usual, like the weight of an entire empire was pressing down on her shoulders. You okay? He asked. No. Tomorrow I have to walk into that council chamber and convince a room. full of politicians that everything they've believed for the past month is a lie. Some of them will be happy to see me alive, but others will see me as a threat to the stability they've built around Mordeth. Jake moved to stand beside her. You have evidence. Proof of what he's done. Evidence can be dismissed as fake. Political alliances are harder to break than you think. She turned to look at him. Jake, after tomorrow, everything changes. The council accepts my claim. I'll be Empress. And Empresses don't travel around in cargo ships with human pilots. He'd been dreading this conversation. I know. The council will expect me to choose a consort from among the noble houses, someone who can strengthen political alliances and help unify the empire. That makes sense, does it? Because I've been thinking about what kind of leader I want to be. The last few weeks working with you, I've learned more about real leadership than I did in 20 years of royal education. Jake frowned. What do you mean? You don't lead because people have to follow you. You lead because they want to. You've never ordered me around or treated me like I was better than you, even after you found out who I really was. You just worked with me, like an equal. Well, you are my equal. Maybe you're a princess, but that doesn't make you better than anyone else. Zara smiled sadly. That's exactly what I mean. Most nobles would never say that to me. They'd bow and scrape, and tell me whatever they thought I wanted to hear. But you tell me the truth, even when it's uncomfortable? So what are you saying? I'm saying that tomorrow I have to choose between being the empress my empire needs and being the person I want to be, and I don't know if I can be both. Morning, they traveled to the imperial capital in Admiral Thane's flagship. Jake had never seen anything like the city that sprawled across the surface of the planet below. Massive towers reached toward the sky, connected by bridges and transport tubes that carried millions of people through their daily lives. The council chamber was even more impressive. Representatives from dozens of noble houses sat in a circular amphitheater that could hold thousands of people. Jake felt completely out of place in his simple pilot's uniform, but Zara had insisted he be there. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, Admiral Thane announced, I present Her Imperial Highness, Princess Zephyra, rightful heir to the ethereal throne. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some council members cheered, others shouted accusations of trickery, and a few simply sat in stunned silence. Mordeth, who had been sitting in the Emperor's chair, turned pale as starlight. This is impossible, he declared. My niece is dead. I saw her body myself. You saw what you wanted to see, Uncle, Zara replied, her voice carrying clearly through. The chamber. It's just like you've been seeing treachery and corruption as acceptable tools of leadership. For the next 2 hours, Zara presented their evidence methodically and clearly. Recordings of Mordeth's illegal weapon sales, financial records showing his theft from the royal treasury, communication logs proving his secret deals with enemy states. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, but Jake could see that evidence alone wasn't going to be enough. The noble houses were split between those loyal to Zara and those who had already committed to supporting Mordeth. Political reality was more complicated than simple right and wrong. Even if these accusations are true, said Lord Chancellor Vex, one of Mordeth's supporters, the fact remains that Princess Sephora has been missing for months. Where has she been? What has she been doing? How do we know she hasn't been compromised by enemy influences? This was the moment Jake had been dreading. He knew what the Chancellor was really asking about. Zara's time with him, a human from a species that many aliens considered primitive. Zara stood straighter, and Jake could see her making a decision that would change everything. I have been learning, she said clearly. Learning what it means to lead people instead of ruling them. Learning what real courage looks like. Learning that the best advisor an empress can have is someone who will tell her the truth instead of what she wants to hear. She turned to look directly at Jake. Chancellor Vex asks if I've been compromised by outside influences. The answer is yes. I've been influenced by honesty, integrity, and the kind of bravery that comes from ordinary people doing extraordinary things. The chamber fell silent. Jake's heart hammered in his chest as he realized what Zara was about to do, which is why she continued, when I take the throne. I will be announcing my engagement to Jake Thompson, the pilot who helped me reclaim my birthright." The explosion of voices that followed was deafening. Some council members shouted in outrage. Others cheered, and a few simply looked shocked beyond words. Through it all, Mordeth sat slumped in defeat, realizing that his niece had just outmaneuvered him completely by choosing to marry a human. Zara was sending a message that she valued. Character over politics, substance over tradition. It was a move so unexpected and bold that it shifted the entire political landscape in her favor. The princess has clearly lost her mind. Mordeth tried to argue, but his words sounded weak and desperate. "On the contrary," said Lady Thessarian, "the oldest member of the council, I think she's found it. We've spent so many years focused on political games that we've forgotten what real leadership looks like." The vote wasn't even close. The Council of Houses confirmed Zara as their rightful empress by a margin of 3-1. With Mordeth's supporters abandoning him as soon as they saw which way the wind was blowing, 3 months later Jake stood on the balcony of the Imperial Palace, still not quite believing that any of this was real. Below them, crowds celebrated the coronation of their new empress and the announcement of her engagement to the cargo pilot who'd helped her save the Empire. "Do you ever regret it?" Zara asked, joining him at the railing. "Giving up your simple life for all this?" Jake looked out over the city, then at the woman he loved. "Are you kidding? I went from being a broke cargo pilot to being engaged to the most powerful person in the galaxy. I think I got the better end of this deal. Though you'll never be able to fly cargo runs again," who says I can't? "An empress needs someone to help her stay connected to ordinary people. I think regular trips to remote colonies should be part of my official duties." Zara laughed, and Jake was reminded of the quiet passenger who'd helped him fix his navigation system all those weeks ago. Underneath all the royal ceremony and political responsibility, she was still the same person who'd chosen to trust him when she could have chosen anyone. "You know," she said, "when Korith first offered you an alien servant as payment for your debt, I bet you never imagined it would lead to this." "Actually," Jake replied, pulling her close, "I think I got exactly what I was promised. I just didn't realize at the time that I was the one who needed to be rescued." They stood together watching the celebration below, two people from completely different worlds who'd found something worth more than money or power or political position. They'd found each other, and sometimes, Jake thought, that was the most valuable payment of all.